Thank you. So I would like to open the July 7th, 2025 special meeting of the South Burlington School Board. Today we would like to start with an executive session, but then we will go back into open session. And so I would entertain a motion to find that premature public knowledge would place the board at a disadvantage, and therefore we need executive session under 1 VSA 313, 1B, and 2. So that relates to real estate and labor negotiations. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion. This is Jen.
Hey, Jen. Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, great. Then I would entertain a motion to enter into executive session.
I'll motion. This is Jen again.
Do I have a second?
Dan seconds.
Okay. Do I have any discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 And Seamus, you're going to send the link for that for the other session?
Yes, I will. I
Okay.
think I only heard Dan and Jen. Emily?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Aye. All right. Well, then we will now go into executive session and we will return at 3 p.m. for the special meeting. So board members and superintendent, I will send you a link right now.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Of the South Burlington. Oh, all right. So I would like to call the July 7th, 2025 special South Burlington school board meeting back to order. So the first item on the agenda after our executive session is announcements and amendments to the agenda. Do we have any announcements or amendments to the agenda? Oh, you're muted, Jen.
Sorry, I toggled off. I think the one thing that I recalled seeing yesterday, I don't know if it's been updated, is that we need to mention the school board vacancy. Was that happening today or is that happening on the 9th?
On Wednesday.
Okay, very good.
Yep, on Wednesday.
Okay.
Any
No.
other announcements or amendments? All right, we'll move on to comments from the public. Is there anybody in the room or on Zoom who might?
Oh, do you from here? You want to? If I want to comment, did you go? Yeah. Hi.
Hi, Daisy.
This is Daisy Brayton, and I just wanted to make a comment on the action that you are going to be taking, or the discussion item, excuse me, 6A policy 2.9, that first reading. I do want to point out that the board may want to consider that this motion will be in direct contradiction to the board management section 3.2, accountability of the superintendent, and then also the superintendent's contract. And I'm happy to provide that in written statement.
Thank you, Daisy. Any other comments in the room? All right, then we will move to our next item, which is action item for policy G8, selection of library materials, third reading. So this is a document that's in the folder for this meeting. We've read it twice. And is there any further discussion on the selection of library materials policy? Okay, well then I would entertain a motion to adopt policy G8 selection of library materials as provided in the current set of documents for this meeting. I think you, Tim, you're muted if you were saying something.
Again, sorry, my apologies. I was muted. You'd think I'd know better, having been on meetings half my life and Zoom and Teams. I move that we accept the policy as read, G8, selection of library materials.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All right, and I think that we should probably do a roll call vote just because we're remote and I don't necessarily have a perfect view onto everybody's screen. So let's so Jen, how do you vote?
Aye.
Emily,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
Tim,
Aye.
and I'm also an aye, so the motion passes. Now we'll move on to policy 4.9, public participation policy, third reading. As and the current text as proposed is in the folder for today's meeting. The one difference from the last time was that in the second reading, we got advice that it would actually be impermissible to limit who could address the board. And so there was a section in the middle of the policy that said, you know, people who can address the board, and it enumerated the list. And so we've removed that and replaced it with simply anyone may address the board.
I liked how you linked it in the agenda, Seamus. I'm just pointing that out. Thank you for doing that.
Yep. So yes, go ahead, Superintendent.
Thank you, Chair. Oh, I am.
All right, can you all hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
So I would advise, that, this be modified to be a first reading. We've had discussion on the topic. However, open meeting law requires 2 readings prior to action being taken. I would also, advise that this is not, a policy under governance. I think this belongs under the policies and procedures section on the website, and that would be under item C, board procedures. There currently aren't any, but this is not something that I think is either a third reading or appropriately labeled as a policy.
Yes, on the point about where to place this, I had received advice from you, Superintendent, that it should go in policies under governance under 4.9. But I agree it might potentially be better in
Yeah.
the guides and in the other section.
Yeah, I had advised that I think not, that it belongs under policies and procedures, under item C, board procedures. And then again, I would advise the board avoid an open meeting law violation, and relabel this a first reading. I also would express the concerns that I'm in an open board meeting room here, and we've had a lot of feedback from constituents, you know, wanting for participation expectations to be made clear. And I think having a third reading without warning the first or second is not only an open meeting law violation, but it's kind of pulling the wool over the community's eyes when, you know, this is a time where we don't typically do a lot of business. I would advise the board to have this be a first official reading to really get community feedback on this. Again, there's no one in the room and very few folks online.
I just need a minute. So you're changing your advice. This should not go under policies under governance.
My advice that I emailed you and that we discussed is that this is under policies and procedures under item C, which is board procedures. That is my recommendation, and that it have 3 readings during a time where our community is engaged right now. Given that school is on recess, we don't have stakeholders to engage or provide feedback on this.
So I think what I want to propose that we do here is open up the policy, change it to what you are saying so that it's under board policies.
Procedures.
Yeah, the policies and procedures. So let me just pull it up here. I will share my screen. Policy 4.9. Okay, so we are going to put this under policies and procedures, which I believe is on.
Yeah, there's currently nothing in that.
That's right.
Right.
It can be
Out of the
seen-
district. Procedures, C, board procedures. Procedures. Okay, and so we've talked about this for almost an hour in public session, when it wasn't during the summer, so I would entertain a motion to accept policies and procedures C for public participation at board meetings as currently written.
I'm sorry, I do have to kind of echo what Violet is saying around this. I'm looking at the past agendas, and I do remember that Laura read this, but I think this was back on June 16th when she did a reading of it, but this was just labeled under discussion items and wasn't, I don't see anything in our agendas where we labeled as first reading, second reading.
Yeah, I understand that that was an error in the way that they were warned. There is recordings of us discussing this for 22 minutes on May 21st, I believe, and then a further 38 minutes on June 21st or something like that. I can look up the actual dates, but we've spent almost an hour discussing this.
Right.
Now
I think
we've reached an hour.
I would just counter that. I think we spend a lot of time discussing a lot of things, but from an official record perspective, we don't have it. We don't have a first reading warned or a second reading warned.
Which would warrant a legitimate open meeting law violation.
I would, of course, if somebody believes that open meeting law has been violated, they should, in my opinion, I don't speak for the board here. They should certainly file that open meeting law violation. However, I believe that we have, in good faith, discussed this twice. And we are now at our third reading. I'd be happy to read it out again. But I'd like to hear from the rest of the board about how they'd like to move forward with this.
I mean, Seamus, I agree that I feel like this has been discussed and perhaps the nomenclature on it was off, but this has been discussed several times, is my opinion. And even if we were to say, okay, well, this is the first warning, and then could we warn it again on the 7th, or I'm sorry, on the 9th? And then would we adopt it after that? I mean, if there's a concern there, if we're trying to meet in the middle somewhere, but
So if we discussed it on the 9th, that would be the
second,
4th time that we've talked about it.
right? And then if I'm hearing the superintendent and Tim correctly, if we were to do that, then that would constitute the second reading. And then we would still have to have one more time where it's discussed, and that would be the 5th time. And, again, in the spirit of trying to just get something out there, I mean, no, I would be okay with it, but, I'm
Yeah.
not control police to say that I think it has been good faith that this has been out there.
Yeah.
And that's my opinion.
So I'll go back. Does it, Emily or Dan, do you have any thoughts on this?
I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other. I'm happy to read it as many more times as necessary for us to be within the rules that we're supposed to be in and have people be able to comment on it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I don't see a problem with reading it a couple more times and having more opportunity for the public to comment on it. But if other people are ready to move forward, sounds like we're split in that area.
Dan,
So
do you have
our,
any thoughts?
our choice is this is gonna be either the first or the third reading? I guess I'm thinking like Jen, why don't we make this the second and then the third reading can be on Wednesday?
Well, so again, I'm gonna say this because we don't have in the official record that we have identified this for a first reading. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion. I agree. We've discussed it. It's been read before, but that hasn't been officially warned to the public as a first reading. Even today, if we read it again, it's really just, we have not warned the public of a first official reading of this document, this policy. And that's where I think I have to agree with the superintendent. I think we are opening ourselves up for a violation and a blatant one. And I don't see the need to rush this just because we've discussed it a couple of times already. I would prefer the board, follow what has been precedent as far as how we warn these officially. Because if we go with this approach, we could conceivably say that anything we discuss a few times here and there, we could simply say, okay, well, we can consider that a first reading and move forward with a motion on a vote. And that's where I see us having a slippery slope here.
So just so I understand, Tim, so what this would look like is if we were to put this, because the agenda's out, it says third reading action. So instead you'd have policy, well, now we're changing it because the name of where it's going to be is 4.9, but would today be the first reading if we were to read it?
I think you would need to warn it for first reading for the 9th, second reading at the subsequent meeting, and then the following meeting would be where you would warn it for action, right? Because I'm going back through the agendas and we never formally warned this from a reading perspective at all.
We discussed it according to open meeting law. We have discussed this twice in open session. I think that deciding that we should not begin to adopt better public participation and formal, clear public participation guidelines now, but instead push this out into August or September would be another example of how this board is not effective and cannot get anything done because we are warned about violations such as not including the words first reading for and in this case a policy that is intended to increase our engagement with the public, bring more of them to our meetings. So I would be happy to entertain a motion to change this to the first reading, the second reading. I'd be happy to entertain a motion to pass this. But I would do anything other than passing this under protest because if we can't warn something, and I also object to Tim's characterization of how this was done. We have this formally warned as a discussion item twice over the last 2 months. We've discussed it in recorded meetings for, as I said, 22 minutes in one case and 38 minutes in the other case. I don't think that that is fairly referred to as a slippery slope. And I think if this board wants to be effective, we need to be able to get through business instead of continually, finding bureaucratic reasons to kick the can down the road. So I would entertain a motion for any of those options.
Well, my motion would be to adopt it. And I mean, again, if this is a violation of open meeting law, then I would say, we will learn from this. But I say that, Seamus, I agree. This is, it has been talked about, and if we didn't have the right formalities surrounding it, then we will learn from this and we will do better going forward, that people can come and now they understand what their public participation is and how they can engage with the board and opportunities there. But I feel like, I don't see that there's been any changes to this other than anyone who may address the board as well. I mean, I feel like this is a very generous statement that clarifies how we will be doing this. And I feel like this is not a contentious issue that we need to be splitting hairs over, in my opinion.
Do I have a second on that?
There would need to be a motion.
So do I have a motion to adopt the policies and procedures, C, public participation in board meetings?
I guess I could make that motion.
Do I have a second? Right, I believe the motion fails. Do we have another alternative motion?
Well, it's quick discussion. I mean, it's on the agenda for today. I know it's listed as action, but can we start over, read it today since it's on the agenda? Consider this the first.
I mean, we can do,
I know
we can do what we want to do within the letter and the spirit of the law. The spirit of the law is that it is to be read multiple times in public. I'm pretty sure the letter of the law does not say that you must put the words dash first reading, dash second reading, etc. So, we could, I mean, and if we're going to count this as the first reading, we can do whatever we want, but the law is not in the, in the realm of dashes and and words.
I would just advise the board is not, above the law, and that warning something, a conversation, on public participation when there's not a soul in the room on a topic that has had a lot of attention. I would just advise, I do not see the upside of that. And so I think sufficiently shared my concerns.
Yes, thank you, Superintendent. Well, I would entertain a motion to consider this the second reading of the policy, and then I would expect that we would then amend the agenda on Wednesday to take action on this.
In order, if you're trying to be compliant with open meeting law, we would have to specify what reading it is in a warned public reading rather than through a oral amendment during the open session.
Yes, I understand your perspective on that.
Seamus, can I ask, will Laura be at the meeting on Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay, I guess part of my hesitation is that this was part of Laura's project, and I feel like I would like her to be there when we might adopt this as a policy. I know she put a lot of work into it. And so I kind of, that's why I would feel like maybe Wednesday would be a better day to
Sure.
have this.
So I would entertain a motion to consider this as the second reading and then amend, and then I would expect on Wednesday to amend the agenda to add an action item to take action on this.
I motion.
Do I have a second on that?
I second.
Any discussion?
I'm stymied that we're making a motion to just say we're doing a second reading. I guess I find it very unusual and not at all in line with what the board has done in the past and how we've reviewed and discussed and presented policies to the public. So I'm just going to throw that out there because I disagree with the motion. It just is a very unusual motion to me.
Yeah, I think that the best interests of the district and the taxpayers are served by becoming a more efficient board that pursues policies and monitors with greater dispatch. I understand from I believe from various sources that this board has not taken a great deal of action over the last few years, and I would like to, at least personally, I would like to change that as I see the direction the district is going in. And I believe public comment that we have received so far, whether it's from staff or taxpayers, does say that we are facing serious challenges right now. And so again, I would say that if we are finding what I would consider to be bureaucratic reasons to that they're not substantiated by either the letter or the spirit of the law, I worry that we will fall back into the relative passivity of the board from the last few years. So that would be my discussion element.
I would be concerned for the board to move forward after having a discussion and acknowledging an open meeting law violation. And I do not think that that would serve to improve the legitimacy of the community's perception of the board.
I would just like to correct the record. I did not acknowledge this as a public meeting law violation. I said that there may be those who may believe that it is an open meeting law violation. And if they feel that that is the case and we do take an action that they believe to be in violation, I would encourage them to do the right thing and file a complaint. However, I have not heard any legal advice that would tell me that we are, you know, especially if the motion under consideration right now, which is to consider this as a second reading, even though it's the third reading, I would, you know, it's one of those things where when the evidence becomes overwhelming, you just kind of have to question what you're doing. So
Seamus, I agree. And if people have any comment, now they have an opportunity through a policy and procedure here that they can express themselves and they know exactly how to do it. Again, I don't consider this to be such a sensitive topic. We are providing this clarity for, you know, how this comment is to happen. I mean, if this was more of a contentious topic that does not provide this kind of clarity, I think that would be a different matter. But I think that this is just a semantics, logistics issue in the way things were classified. And I agree in the efficacy of this board that we need to keep moving forward. And I was part of the committee that put it together. Seamus, obviously you were part of it. Laura weighed in on this. And I think that's a good solution, is to have the third reading be, you know, for Wednesday. And just, you know, because it actually says on the agenda right now that this is the third reading. But you know, that's fine. And again, if people show up and they take exception to this, then I would say we have that opportunity to go back and, hey, we're going to learn from it. And maybe there's some amendments and modifications that need to be made. I don't see any harm in that, right? It's not like the ship has set sail forever and ever. Any of these things can be amended at any point, I would believe.
And we're a citizen board. We're, you know, we're acting in our elected capacities according to our conscience and our belief as to what the best interests of the district are within the law. So
I'm looking, there's a comment that just came in on here, and it is from Diane Bugby, and she says, I'm a
wait,
member.
wait, hold on. Sorry, Jen. I don't think you can read that.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. We don't, yeah.
Okay.
Is there any further discussion on the motion to treat this as the second reading?
Would just offer that that wouldn't remedy a potential open meeting law violation because we would have to, the board still hasn't warned a first reading. And again, I'll reiterate, you know, the majority of the board has been on the board since early March, but this is a topic that the community has discussed for a long time. And so it is a very contentious issue, and there are pretty heated opinions on this in a lot of different directions. So again, I've just advised the board, if you want to follow open meeting law, this would need to be warned in writing as a first reading. I fully understand your points about discussion. I'm just simply advising on the structures by which public school boards in Vermont are obligated to operate under.
So I have a question. So could we then warn this one, or is it now too late because it wasn't warned? It was warned as the third reading, but if we were to change it and say, all right, then then if we make on Wednesday is the second reading, would that suffice?
According to what Violet is saying, according to Violet's interpretation, the answer is no. We would have to go into the next meeting. In fact, we could not even do that. We'd have to warn the first reading of this sometime in August. So I think that that is such a clear violation of both the spirit of the law and also the interests of the district and the taxpayer that I would be shocked if that is what we did.
So I guess I will say, I mean, Tim, at this moment on this panel right here, is the most senior person, and I do appreciate the wisdom he brings with that and the experience. I also think this whole conversation has taken way longer than it needed to because of, I'm not exactly sure why, but I would be totally fine with I would like to hear what Tim thinks we should do moving forward in order for us to stay within open meeting law. And I would be curious what he has to say, and I would be willing to adopt that if he felt in good faith for this board that that is the way we should go in order to remain within meeting law appropriate. And also I do understand that it seems like that will take a long time. Seamus, I hear what you're saying, but it is summertime and we won't have a lot of people at our meetings moving forward. So I don't think it is a huge loss if we have to wait to cut through all this red tape and also, you know, take the advice of a person who's been on the board and been through these kinds of things for many times. So I guess I'm just going to say that, and I'd really love it if we could just wrap up this conversation and move on to something else.
Did you want me to speak, Emily? I appreciate the vote of confidence. We'll see. No, I don't see much difference in if I don't see much advantage to trying to pass this within the next week or two versus following an appropriate procedure to ensure that it's done correctly. And the appropriate procedure would be to, on an agenda, warn it as a first reading and then have a second reading and then do your third action. That means we would potentially adopt this perhaps by the end of August, but there's no rush to adopt this there's no difference in adopting it between the 1st of August and the end of August, from where I can see. By openly saying, hey, we'll just risk it, and you may be committing an open violation or open meeting law violation just to get this out a few weeks ahead of time, and this is really important. That I see as a big problem. And I think the board will pay a price for that regardless. I think we should adhere to past practice, which has been to officially warn it for readings on the agendas so that the public is aware of it. And has a chance to participate in it, especially since we have actually changed the language in this draft versus what was officially read. But no, I don't want to say officially, but what was read in that last meeting. So again, from an expediency perspective, I think it is not worth the risk.
Tim, can I ask you one more question? If we were to warn it 1, 2, 3 more readings, what if we made changes to it at some point along the way? Would that start it all over again with reading it 1, 2, and 3?
No, certainly not. I don't believe so. And Violet may be able to pipe in here. The reason we would read it is so that we can have discussion around it and potentially make changes to it before we take action on it.
That's correct. You could change the language and not have to start over.
Right.
And best practice is to have discussion about a topic, especially one where there's a lot of community interest before action begins. You're right, Tim.
All right, so I think that the motion to have this as the second reading has also failed. So I would entertain a motion to I guess just move on from this discussion point and move this to a future agenda. I will say that I think that this is an example of our actions being chilled, and I'll leave it at that.
And Seamus, I think one other thing is, I think that, part of this could just be the learning curve for some of the new board members and the way that this should have been warned on an agenda previously, and perhaps working with the former chair to say, like, look, here we have this policy that we want to, because we read it. So, you know what I mean? Like, I think learning going forward, like, this is what we need to do to have the efficacy that we need.
Yeah,
Right.
it's also, I would say that the primary mistake that was made here was I expected our lawyer to be here today, and he was in a mediation session that, as far as I know, is now run over by 3 hours. And so unfortunately he was not able to join us today, but I believe that he would have been able to resolve this question very quickly. I believe I had already gotten approval from him to do this. So I might suggest that what we do is move on from this action item, and then if we get word from the lawyer that, well, we'll just see what the lawyer says, and then we'll take, we'll take that into consideration for what we do next.
Okay.
Jen, to your point, I did advise that prior to warning this, that this be a first reading.
You are correct. The superintendent has provided the advice that she gave today in open session before. All right. So shall we move on from that action item? Dan, did you have any thoughts?
I say we move on.
Okay. So now we'll move on to discussion item A, policy 2.9, communication and support to the board, first reading. And this I will read this out loud.
James, I'm gonna object to this agenda item being discussed publicly in any capacity. This is incongruent with the board's policies 3.0, 3.1, 3.2, and also the board's policies with respect to the governance process 4.0, 4.1, 4.2, and 4.3.
Thank you for that, Violet. So this this amendment is was prepared by our lawyer, and we are going to read it.
I
And
spoke to the lawyer this afternoon who said that he had not reviewed this language before and that it's incongruent with our policies and the language in my contract.
I'm sorry, Violet, but I'll recognize you if if you'd like to provide further comment. But this policy amendment was written by our lawyer, and it is still subject to further legal review, as I believe you were attempting to point out. But I will read the language of the motion, and then I have a short statement prepared to go along with this motion. And I'll also recognize that in public comment, Daisy Brayton expressed her concerns about the another section of it.
Yeah, I would recommend that you strike it as improper and it's not a properly warned meeting.
Thank you again, Violet. So the motion as stated is, so this is a first reading, is that I move that the policy governance resolution adopted by the Board of School Directors be amended by adding the following text to the end of section 2.9, communications in support to the board, to read as follows. Further, except with respect to complaints of protected characteristics discrimination against the superintendent or grievances under this district's collective bargaining agreement, which shall be processed in accordance with the separately adopted district procedures, the superintendent shall not prevent or interfere with the right and the ability of any district employee to address the board orally and in writing with respect to any work-related matter, and shall not retaliate against or discipline a district employee who has exercised this right. Now, I would like to read a statement that explains that a little bit, because I think that a particularly important point about that is that we are not responding to any particular case or individual. The intent of today's amendment is to limit the use of discipline when employees communicate with the board. We are responding to the recent monitoring report on treatment of staff. We believe that the first step to healing relationships is to ensure that the act of communicating with us, the board, is not a cause in itself for discipline. And I believe
administered for anyone who has spoken to the board. In fact, I've made clear the complaint process exists, and people have utilized that. There have been no situations.
Superintendent, I'm sorry, I'd like to remind you that I'm the board chair, and I can recognize you immediately further after my comments, but please don't interrupt me. Thank you. So this amendment does not contradict our existing policy governance, because our code of conduct already states, A, meeting discussion content will consist solely of issues that clearly belong to the board to decide or monitor according to board policy. B, information that is not for neither monitoring performance nor board decisions will be avoided or minimized and always noted as such. So again, information that is neither monitoring performance nor board decisions will be avoided and minimized. C, deliberation will be fair, open, and thorough, but also timely, orderly, and kept to the point. Furthermore, in our code of conduct, we commit to only being influenced by a fair presentation of all sides of the question. 2 more points. If we adopt this amendment, it may impose an additional burden on the board if more employees reach out to us. It is our responsibility to ensure that communications are sent to the appropriate channel. Again, in cases of protected class discrimination, grievances covered by the collective bargaining agreement, And the recognition, we need to make a recognition also that this is not in response to anything other than the monitoring that we have already done. Finally, I will say, if we adopt this amendment, I believe it will support the superintendent and increase engagement with her initiatives, such as the All Voices Initiative, because it is an explicit district-wide commitment to the protection of free speech. And I hope my fellow school directors will consider this amendment so that we can all focus on helping the superintendent with monitoring on treatment of staff. So Superintendent Nichols, I'm sorry to have interrupted you before, and I'd like to turn it over to you again.
Thank you. The board did not take action on 2.2. So asserting that corrective action is needed when there was no action taken on the June 18th monitoring report is inconsistent. This meeting is illegitimate and improperly warned, and discussion about a policy that has no basis in any Vermont School Board Association policy is against past practice and is reckless. The governance model, which is outlined clearly in my contract, states very clearly that the superintendent, so 3.0 global governance management, the board's sole official connection to the operational organization, its achievements, and its conduct will be through the superintendent of schools. 3.2, accountability of the superintendent. The superintendent is the board's only link to operational achievement and conduct, so that all authority and all accountability of staff, as far as the board is concerned, is considered the authority and accountability of the superintendent. Accordingly, the board will never give instructions to persons who report directly or indirectly to the superintendent. This is in my contract and it's in the board's governance model. And I'm growing more concerned by the moment that the board seems to view open meeting law and its own governance as red tape. I think the policy is very clear on board members' responsibilities. If you look at the fours, what your role is. Governance style 4.1, the board will govern lawfully, observing the principles of the policy governance model with an emphasis on outward vision rather than internal preoccupation. C, strategic leadership more than administrative detail. I have a lot of operational concerns with this proposed language. Again, there is no Vermont School Board Association policy that recommends this. I would also offer that there's significant federal and state laws that prohibit, that in fact, support fair treatment of staff. We do not have any of these integrated into our policies under governance because they're political and they change. This is essentially inputting a political idea into the district's constitution. I'm just flabbergasted, truly.
Are there any comments from other members of the board?
Yeah, I'd like to say something. I mean, there's nothing in the statement that says that we are going to go into the schools and tell people what to do. This is simply people, we're trying to make sure that people have their guaranteed right of free speech. They should be able to come to the board and speak, write to the board about their concerns. It doesn't state anything about the board taking action. It's just the board listening to people and without fear of any kind of retaliation.
We already have that in place and it's the complaint process.
Then
And
there
I
should be
guess-
nothing wrong with this.
That process I support and I think is legitimate. I would say to the board with this, I wonder, I will ask the question, is the board seeking operational control of the district? And how do you view this work being taken away from unionized staff, from human resources, to legal staff? Who is supporting these requests and what budget lines is this support coming from?
Do we have any comments from Emily, Jen, or Tim?
I mean, I don't think the intent here is that it is to undermine executive authority. I don't think it also is intended that this will be a board interference in operational matters. I mean, I understand the concern that it breaks the single employee rule. But I think the critical thing is here is that, we need to um, provide that um, clarity and ability for folks to engage with the board if necessary and not have a fear of reprisal. And I do not feel that the existing policy governance is sufficient, that we have, that our policies are sufficient. So I feel like this is necessary.
So.
Okay.
Go
That,
ahead.
explicit employee right, I believe, as Dan just stated, for freedom of speech.
So I would just ask where. So we are looking at fundamentally changing our governance policy here, which to me is a significant step. And I'm trying to understand, first of all, what the problem is here. Do we have examples of retribution and retaliation? Because otherwise, why are we implementing this particular policy change? I would also ask my fellow board members to point out to me where a staff member is prevented from speaking to the board. I've sat through 2 budget cycles already, and I've heard from numerous staff members who dissented and prepared and came in with their opinions and talked about how hard work was. And at no time was anybody prevented from speaking to the board. I believe that's also in law, that anybody can come before the board and speak to the board. There is nothing in our policies now that prevents that. I see this as potentially just sort of, again, a curious move, because I'm just wondering, if we look at this, we are going to potentially have to monitor this particular new policy going forward. So what are we expecting from a policy monitoring perspective and evidence, right? We're going to, to say, hey, there was no retaliation. Are we looking for examples of grievances or complaints? That's already covered in treatment of staff, right? We already covered that there. Interestingly enough, I actually looked at some other monitoring reports. Essex Westford last year, treatment of staff had this very issue of retaliation covered under treatment of staff under an existing policy. So I don't see as I don't understand the drive behind this and how staff is not already protected in their ability to come forward and speak to the board about any particular matter.
So I would
One
just
second,
say,
and would
sorry.
you mind, Emily, do you have any thing you'd like to say? Okay.
No, Jen can ask her.
I mean, it was more of just a statement. I mean, I think it shows due diligence by the board, and provides a layer of protection for whistleblowers. And I think that, Tim, to your point, I think there have been multiple reports that suggest a chilling effect on the staff's ability to speak openly. And, we've seen that there is non-compliance with 2.1. And so I feel like
2.2.
2.2, I'm sorry. So I feel like this is just ensuring that the conduct aligns with the expectations of the board.
Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, if everybody, or what I've heard is the employees already have these rights. All this does is reinforces it. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not a power grab. It doesn't state anything in there about the board going into schools and trying to control things, give orders, anything like that. All it does is reinforce an employee's right, which Violet, you have said, and Tim, you have said, they have come to the board meetings and they have spoken, they've written notes. If they've already done that, all this does is reinforce it. There's nothing about a power grab.
Yeah, I have a couple more comments on this. I think that this, first and foremost, is not an accusation of any kind. This is simply a suggested action following the finding of noncompliance with treatment 2.2. So that's the first thing. So I am certainly not saying that the superintendent has ever retaliated. I'm certainly not saying that. And then the second piece of this is that this protects the action of communicating with the board, the simple act of communicating with the board, right? Which it's not saying that no matter what you say to the board is totally kosher. Like there is, as we have discussed on other occasions, there can still be very inappropriate things that might be published to the board. And those things would be, they would have a separate cause of action in them. And so we're not trying to restrict that. We are simply saying, and I think this is an easy clarification because I believe Violet when she says that she does not retaliate against people. I just want to make that a policy so that there is never a question of that. And I think that that is, again, in support of the superintendent's initiatives to move forward. Violet, please go ahead.
Thank you. I do have a couple questions. There was no discussion of the addition of this on the last agenda during agenda planning. And it's very unusual to, and I was not a part of this discussion at all. And so it's very unusual to see a policy modification offered as a first reading, one, without being discussed in an open meeting on an agenda. Two, without discussion before a first reading, as we've just discussed. And so I would like to know, where is this agenda item coming from? And when did the discussion for this occur, since it did not come in an open meeting, either through agenda planning, discussions, or readings? So I'd like to know who put this on the agenda, and when was the discussion had regarding this?
Would you like me to answer that now, or would you like to ask further questions?
I have one statement.
Okay.
As well. I've been twice now accused by both Director Lawrence and Chair Abshir of impacting the board through chilling effects. Chilling, if suggesting that the board follow open meeting law is chilling, I think it's really just intended to shame the superintendent if you refer to that as chilling. Likewise, I'm adhering to the policy that we have where the board and the district have given operational authority to the superintendent. And I again would object to be accused of having a chilling effect by trying to follow the governance process by which I signed my name to and said that I would agree to adhere to and support the board in. So that's my statement.
Thank you.
I'd
And
like how the agenda item came up and when it was discussed.
right. Yeah, this agenda item came up in response to a Freedom of Information Act request. And when I saw that Freedom of Information Act request, I believed that as the board chair, in order to ensure the efficient compliance with that FOIA request, I would probably need to have a policy such as this in place. So I did not discuss this with, I don't think I really discussed this with anybody before I asked our district council to draft it. And then I sent it out after it had already been drafted. So there's been no board discussion, certainly not in quorum, of this before this moment right now. So, I may have told somebody that this was coming, but this is the first time the board has considered this. And that's why I felt it was important that we talk about it together. And I, does that answer your question?
It does, I appreciate that, and I would say that's a violation of 4.3 agenda planning and 4.4 chair's role.
Any other comments from the board on this? So since we're together, we could edit this if there are any suggestions, or I could collect your feedback to pass on to our lawyer.
I guess I'll say, Seamus, my final thought on this is that it's redundant. If we're going to add and change policy simply because we want to reaffirm something that already exists, I find that just unnecessary. And I'm not quite sure why we would go change our base policies just to reaffirm a right that people already have. So that's kind of where I stand on this. Thank you.
Okay, Tim, so from you, I actually have 3 bullet points. How might we how would this affect monitoring? I'm paraphrasing you and I kind of say, like, shouldn't this be in treatment of staff, not communication and support to the board? Shouldn't we establish that this is not redundant? So thank you for that.
Well, and just for clarification, this particular policy, what is being said here, I believe is covered in many other places already by Vermont law, by any number of statutes in place already and existing policies. And so it is redundant, and I don't think it's necessary to change our existing policies with this statement.
Dan, you have your hand up.
Yes, I don't see anything wrong with something redundancy or reinforcing something if it's done to protect the employees. As I stated, we're not trying, this isn't a power grab or trying to, grab operational control. It's just another way to make sure that employees are protected. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Emily, do you have any thoughts?
I would just say that I echo what Dan said, and I don't see an issue with reinforcing what's already in place. If that were to create an environment where people feel that they are sure that they are able to share what they would like to share with the board and with the community, because I don't think anyone can ever be too sure that they're allowed to do that.
Jen?
Yeah, I would just re-emphasize that as well, that, this amendment, it's not about, from what I can see, it's not about micromanaging. It's just ensuring that every employee feels safe in speaking the truth to power, any power, including the board. So I think that, it seems like it should go without saying, and there's lots of other laws that are out there, but I think this specifically calls that out, which I think is good.
All right, I think that we can probably move beyond that. Any other comments on that? Okay. All right, so do we have it on the final agenda for today that we would do consent agenda today?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right, so is there any discussion that we need to have of that, Violet, or?
Yep, so you could take so typically what happens is that you would ask for a motion for the approval of the minutes. And the AP orders, all other items are approved through consent. There would be time for discussion during the motion piece, during the discussion section, after the second is called.
Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? The AP orders, you said?
Specifically the minutes, typically those are called out by date, so June 3rd, June 12th, and list those. And then, you can have discussion before a motion is put on the table for those. So, are there any typical language would be, are there any amendments or modifications to the June 3rd, minutes? And then you would wait, pause, hearing none. Are there any, amendments to the June 12th? And so on, and go through those one by one. And then same thing with the AP orders, but then section 3 is typically done in one. Do I have a motion to approve items C and action items in the consent agenda?
Okay, thank you. So I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a,
Well, for June 3rd,
okay, read them out. Do I have
Yeah.
a motion to approve the minutes for June 3rd, June 12th, June 16th, June 18th, June 23rd, 2025?
I make a motion to approve all those minutes.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All right, so for discussion, are there any comments on the June 3rd minutes? Any comments on the June 12th minutes? Any comments on the June 16th minutes? Any comments on the June 23rd minutes?
Yes.
Sorry, I have one question on the 16th. So just in reviewing that one, this was regarding the approval of the superintendent's evaluation, self-evaluation. It was noted that Hoffman, Lawrence, and Boyer abstained from the vote. In reviewing the recording, I think what happened, Seamus, was you asked for approval, 4 of us said aye, and then you just said the motion passes. And I don't think Jen, Emily, and Dan actually vocally abstained, so they just weren't given a chance to respond. I just don't know if that needs to be reflected in the record or if that's considered an abstention.
Okay, thank you. So that's on the 16th.
Yeah, that was, and I can send you the note and where I saw it. I just
That would be great.
want to
Thank you.
make sure it's recorded correctly.
Okay, and Violet, you were saying for the 23rd?
Yes, personnel records are highly protected. The board invited me to not attend the meeting on June 23rd. As such, I did not. My personnel matters were then discussed in an open session where there is a provision in open meeting law for personnel records to only occur in executive session. Because of these reasons, I would like all records of my personnel records to be stricken from the June 23rd minutes.
Okay, would you send me an email with that with those specific redactions?
Yes,
All
thank
right,
you.
thank you. Okay, so I think that motion should probably fail, and let's state a new motion here. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from June 3rd, June 12th, and June 18th. Do I have a motion?
My motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second,
Thank you. Okay, so do we have any discussion of the June 3rd? The June 12th? The June 18th? Okay, all those in favor of approving the minutes from June 3rd, June 12th, and June 18th, please say aye.
Aye.
I,
Aye.
Aye. Tim? Maybe Tim is muted. Okay, so that motion passes. Okay, so next is approval of AP orders. Do I have a motion to approve the AP orders?
I'll move to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 I,
Great. Motion passes. And finally, do I have a motion to approve the hires? Listed there.
I'll motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
And then, any discussion?
Welcome aboard.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 I,
Thank you. And then, do I have a motion to approve the action item, in the consent agenda?
The payable check to Belkate. I motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
I second.
All right, any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 I,
Aye. Okay, and that motion passes. Okay, that was the last item in our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn the July 7th, 2025 special meeting of the South Burlington School Board?
I motion.
Do I have a second?
second,
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
Sorry, I should have asked any discussion.
what are those lights on your face?
Yeah. The kids are getting impatient. Okay, then the motion passes and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.